Let's get into it now. A spoiler-free review of Godzilla and Kong: A New Empire. Going to be a really fun and easy review to do today because that's just the type of movie this is. This was me going in to watch this movie. Here's the switch on my brain. Turned it completely off. Now, the MonsterVerse is interesting. It started back 10 years ago now with Godzilla in 2014. This was the reintroduction of Godzilla and then later Kong to the American audience, which had really been absent for a while now, even though Godzilla has 35 plus, almost 40 films in its legacy, one of the most historic franchises of all time. But really, the best ones come out of Japan. And the American ones don't really get it right. And I feel like after watching Godzilla Minus One, I am completely spoiled. But the interesting thing about the MonsterVerse, they didn't really start out making these big, hokey, dumb movies. That is now kind of what they have evolved into, really leaning into that playfulness. So if you know that, and that is the type of movie you want to watch, I think you go into the theater and have an amazing time because that is exactly what this movie is now. In this one, not really a whole lot to the plot. Essentially, it takes place after the first one, which it does help to see Godzilla and Kong, mainly so you know what's going on with their beef, also with them quickly getting into what Hollow Earth is, which is greatly described in part one. It's essentially this ancient subterranean deep ecosystem in Earth where there's like no gravity, it's close to the planet's core, and all these other titans live. Kong goes back and forth between the two. So to really get to know what that is, you have to watch the first one. I don't think you'd be completely lost, but they do spend a lot of time there, so it would help to know that. And it would help to know why they beef, because there's a moment in the movie that would really only be gratifying if you watch the first one. But hey, there's also not a lot to grasp onto. If you Google it before you watch it, I think you'll understand. You'll be fine. It's basically just two monsters fighting a bunch of other monsters. Not a whole lot to get. And that is exactly what the entire plot is. You have Godzilla and Kong still at opposite ends, but now there is this new threat forming that is bigger and stronger, and they're going to have to team up to take them on. So what you do get in this movie is a lot of big, fun action, and I think it does demand the big screen because it is a spectacle to watch. It's almost to the point that I don't even think you need the humans anymore, even though Brian Tyree Henry is the comic relief in this movie. Rebecca Hall is pretty good too. But you don't really go into this movie wanting to see any acting performances because they are doing the bare minimum, really. There really isn't much of a script. There's no character development. I will say when it comes to the dialogue between the first one and this one, it really took a dip. So I don't even think you need the humans anymore. I would find it more interesting if they just had the Titans on the screen the entire time. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Planet of the Apes because the majority of that movie is just the apes communicating with each other. So problem you get into is Godzilla is not communicating with anybody. He's not learning sign language. He's not going to express his emotions. He is just going to be Godzilla the way he is. So I think that leads into why Kong is featured more in the movie, because if there is going to be any kind of three-dimensional character, it is going to be Kong because he is the most human-like. You're not really going to get that from Godzilla. And what that ended up causing for me was too much Kong. I am much more of a Godzilla fan. In the first one, I wanted Godzilla to win at all costs. I think he is the ultimate Titan. But this one spends a majority of the time with Kong. And it's different from how I felt in Godzilla Minus One, where Godzilla was used a little bit more conservatively, but it was also more calculated because in Godzilla Minus One, when Godzilla was on screen, it was important. He came in, he destroyed something, he had a plan, and then he went away. In a film like Godzilla and Kong: A New Empire, it's not really that same level of execution. You have big monsters running around the entire time. For the better half of the movie, it is all just visual effects and animated characters moving along all the scenes. So it's not like they're limiting the use of the Titans. You're really getting a lot of them, but you don't really get a whole lot of Godzilla. I think they should switch it up in this case and give you just more Godzilla. I want him hanging out. I do like some of the scenes and shots in the movie where he's like taking a nap inside of the Coliseum. That was the most human-esque quality that we had for Godzilla. He basically turned into a big cat. So I think there is some kind of middle ground for these movies to find of being something a little bit more sophisticated like a Godzilla minus one, but also having the playfulness like Shin Godzilla, which kind of walks that line of being a little bit campy, but also has a little bit of a sense of realism. So if they could rein that in a little bit, I think these movies could go from good to great. But again, I think what they are really leaning into is the big dumb action. It really feels more like a Transformers movie. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Avatar with him going to Hollow Earth. And then, of course, it has that Planet of the Apes sci fi vibe to it. So it's a little bit of all of those and then its own just mindless, big screen demanding action. So my favorite parts were watching Godzilla. Everything that followed him, I loved it. You see how he kind of evolves into what you see in the trailer of him turning pink. So I thought that part was cool. But to get to that part, you're going to have to get over some of the introduction scenes. One in particular of Kong having a toothache and them calling in a dentist to fix his tooth. At that point, I kind of realized, oh, this is the direction they're going with this movie. And then it did spend about an hour ramping up into the action where it was really just a lot of them hanging out, exploring Hollow Earth, which visually looks really cool. I think there's a lot of different places you can explore there. Again, I think they should spend the entirety of the movie down there. Take the humans out of it. We don't need them. And just give us Kong and Godzilla finding and fighting all of these weird looking titans. And the fact that this movie opened up to $80 million this past weekend is astonishing to me. Overall, the 5 films so far, not including the new one, have grossed almost $2 billion at the box office for just a monkey and a lizard fighting each other, which proves to me that people still want to see stuff like this. I still want to see stuff like this. Because you're not going to go in and watch a movie that is going to change your life, but you're going to see one big dumb animal fighting another big dumb animal. Then you start to get emotionally involved with these big dumb animals, and you're like, why do I care so much about this radioactive lizard? I don't know, but I want him to win. So I'm still Team Godzilla all the way. I can't believe they put his name first in the movie title and then gave him less screen time. Dude is coming off an Oscar win, and you give him less screen time than Kong? Unbelievable. Other than that, I think it's a really fun time at the movies. Again, shut off your brain. Just go in to watch something mindless, dumb, big fun action. I give Godzilla and Kong: A New Empire 3.5 out of 5 atomic breaths. I said breaths, not breasts. Thank you.